Before my official time starts, I have a request. Put down all the cell phones. Put them away. We're going to have a more intimate conversation. Just put them away. And all the cameras, you have to go in the back.
Go in the back.
All the photographers in the back.
Good.
Nice. Let me start on a somber note. I hope it'll end up being a liberating reflection, but you will judge. GDP is slowing all over the world. The reason, productivity has been declining for 20 years all over the world. The result, unemployment's high, really high among the young millennial digital generation. Our economists say we need to look forward to 20 years of slow growth. That's the future. And here we are after two industrial revolutions in the 19th, 20th century, and here's the sad reality. The 80 richest individuals in the world today, we could put them in this little area. Their combined wealth now equals the accumulated wealth of 1/2 the human population of this planet. 3.5 billion people. There's something so dysfunctional about the way we're organizing our economic life. And now this economic crisis is compounded by an environmental crisis. 2 centuries, 2 industrial revolutions. We've spewed massive amounts of CO2 and methane and nitrous oxide into the atmosphere of this little planet. And the long and short of it is, we are now in real-time climate change. And what's terrifying is the water cycles of the Earth are shifting. And this is the watery planet. They're on an exponential curve. And the result is we're now in the 6th extinction wave in the history of this Earth. There have been 5 others before this, way before we were here. Our scientists tell us that in this century, we could lose half the species of life on Earth. I don't know if we can make it as a species. We are asleep, as my wife says. We're really asleep. We've got about 5 more decades to turn this around totally. So what do? We need a new economic vision for the world, and it better be compelling. We need a game plan for that vision, and it better be deliverable. And it's got to move as fast in the developing countries as the industrial nations. We're going to have to address our relationship to this Earth in less than 4 decades. So we need to step back for a moment and ask, how do the great economic revolutions in history occur? If we know how they occur, we're going to get a roadmap here as to the new journey we have to take. There have been at least 7 major economic paradigm shifts in history. And from an anthropological point of view, they're very interesting. They share a common denominator. And that is, at a moment of time, 3 defining technologies emerged and converged to create what we call in engineering a general purpose technology platform, an infrastructure that fundamentally changes the way we manage, power, and move economic activity across the value chains. What are those 3 technologies? Now I want you to think digital. First, new communication technologies to more efficiently manage the economic activity. Number 2, new sources of energy to more efficiently power the economic activity. Number 3, new modes of transportation and logistics to more efficiently move the economic activity. When communication technologies converge with new energy and new sources of transportation, it changes the way we manage power and move economic life. Simple from an anthropological perspective, not in a single economic textbook. 2 examples, first and second industrial revolutions, 19th, 20th century. The Brits led us into the first industrial revolution with steam-powered printing. Big leap forward in communication. Then they laid out a telegraph system in the second half of that century. Those communication technologies converged with a new energy source, cheap coal, in the British hinterlands. Then the Brits came up with an invention to harvest it called the steam engine. Then they put the steam engine on rails, locomotives, national rail systems, urban life, the rest is history. Second industrial revolution in the United States, to some extent Germany, but you missed out on the energy part. You didn't have the oil, you had the coal. Centralized communication, and especially the telephone. You think the internet's a big deal? Telephone was a big deal. Later, radio and television, and those communication technologies converged in the US with cheap Texas oil, powered by a German invention, the internal combustion engine. And then Henry Ford put us all on the road. That second industrial revolution took the entire world through the 20th century. It peaked July 2008. If you remember that month, Brent crude oil hit a record of $147 on world markets, and the entire economy shut down in July 2008. That was the economic earthquake. The collapse of the financial market 60 days later was the aftershock. You couldn't keep the fictional economy moving when the real economy shut down. And the reason it shuts down is everything depends on fossil fuels. Fertilizers, pesticides, construction materials, pharmaceutical products, synthetic fiber, power, transport, heat, and lights, all made out of fossil fuels, are moved by it. So when oil goes over 90 a barrel, all the other prices go up. At 120 a barrel, purchasing power slows. At 140, it shuts down. And so we're in now a sunset for this second industrial revolution: centralized telecommunication, fossil fuel, nuclear energy, and internal combustion transport. After the shutdown, oil went down to 50 a barrel because there was no economic activity. And then as soon as we started growing again, oil went up to 115 a barrel, purchasing power shut down again. Now oil's gone down to 30 a barrel because they're all fighting among themselves. The oil producers are fighting the shale producers, are fighting the tar sand producers to wipe each other out. How does a civilization live on an energy regime so undependable, so dysfunctional, it's gyrating wildly in its last decades? Let me share an anecdote. When Chancellor Merkel became Chancellor of Germany, she asked me to come to Berlin in the first couple of weeks of her government to help her address the question, how do we grow the German economy on her watch and create jobs? The first question I asked the Chancellor when I got to Berlin: Madam Chancellor, how do you grow the German economy or the European economy or the global economy when your businesses are plugging into a second industrial revolution platform, centralized telecommunication, fossil fuel, nuclear power, internal combustion, road, rail, water, and air transport, and that platform matured its productivity in 1990, and it hasn't moved since then? So, I'm talking about productivity. What is productivity? Well, we usually think, more output per input, and we think it depends on more capital for better machines and better workers. But that's only about 14% of productivity. Much of the rest of the 86% of productivity is something we call in economics aggregate efficiency, the ratio of potential work to the actual useful work you get out of a conversion. And this falls along the lines of the laws of thermodynamics. Let me give you an example. You studied biology. If a lion captures an antelope and devours it, only about 10 to 20% of the total energy in that antelope gets into the lion. The rest is lost in the conversion. That's its aggregate efficiency. What does this have to do with my conversation with the Chancellor? The second industrial revolution in the United States began in 1903 at 3% aggregate efficiency, meaning in every conversion across every value chain, extracting, storing, producing, consuming, about 97% lost. And energy is everything from the rare earths in your granules in your phones to the metallic ores to the fossil fuels. By 1990, the United States got up to about 13% aggregate efficiency. Nothing's changed. That was our ceiling. Germany got to 18.5% aggregate efficiency. Nothing's changed. Japan got to almost 20. So you can have market reforms, labor reforms, fiscal reforms, new kinds of incentives for entrepreneurs, but as long as you are operating on that platform, even with all your killer technologies in this room, you can't get above the ceiling of 20% aggregate efficiency, which is much of productivity. That's what's missing from the story here. We think we just have to create 1 million Steve Jobs, and the job will be done. So on that day, I outlined with the Chancellor a third industrial revolution, a new convergence of communication, energy, and transport to manage power, move economic activity in Germany. At the end of the day, the Chancellor said to me privately, Mr. Rifkin, we will have this third industrial revolution for Germany. Let's report back later on what's happened in the last 10 years. Germany is leading the way here, now with China, where we're working as well. The communication internet, which is now matured, thanks to everyone in this room. It's been 25 years since the World Wide Web came online. It's now converging with a digitalized renewable energy internet and a digitalized automated GPS and soon driverless road, rail, water, and air internet to create three internets in one, a super internet: communication, energy, and transport, manage power, and move economic activity across the value chains. These three internets ride on top of a platform called the Internet of Things. So we're applying sensors in every device so they can talk with each other, talk with us, and send big data. But where are they sending it to? This is what was lost, even by GE and Siemens and IBM and Cisco. Where are we sending it to? We send it to communication, energy, and transport so that we learn how to better manage power and move economic activity across the value chains. So we have sensors in the factories, the agricultural fields, smart homes, smart vehicles, warehouses, and by 2030, ubiquitous interconnectivity. We're creating an external global brain that can flow data on everything going on, both in the economic system and the ecosystem, to everyone at all times. This is an external global brain. On the upside, exciting. We now have the interconnectivity moving, and this is the digital revolution. This is the third industrial revolution. It started with digitalization on robotics on the factory floor and computers. Now it's maturing over the next 50 years with the Internet of Things. There is no fourth industrial revolution. I know some of you are going to Davos. There is no such thing. It may be a marketing tool, but it is not. Unless we move to quantum, we're in a digital revolution. So, what this allows us to do is the whole human race can go up on this Internet of Things platform with cheap mobile technology and have a transparent picture of the economic data going around the world. That evens the playing field. That means we can begin to democratize economic life, and all of us can engage each other directly. No more middlemen. No more vertically integrated organizations separating us. That's what's going on with digital technology. Now, as exciting as it is, we can start to connect the human race to think as one extended human family. Immediately, the chill effect. Everybody interconnected. What about network neutrality? How do we ensure that governments don't purloin this Internet of Things or big corporations for political or commercial gain? Of course, if you enclose it, you can't get the productivity out of it. How do we ensure data security? And when everyone's interconnected, how do we ensure privacy? How do we thwart cybercrime and cyber terrorism? How do we ensure resiliency in the system, because it could break down at any moment and then we're all in trouble? This is the dark net. And what I want to say is we're going to have to spend as much time and money on the dark side as on the bright vision in front of us, or we won't get there in time. And I believe the political struggle of the next 3 generations, some of you young people will be here for 3 more generations, it's going to be around how we address these very heady issues. But let's assume this afternoon we can address the dark side. Here's what this Internet of Things platform allows us. Anybody can go up there, a small business, a large company, a nonprofit, and you can take your data that's flowing through the value chain and separate it from all the other big data. That's noise. Then here's what you can do. Take your big data on your value chain, where you're extracting and moving and storing and producing and consuming and recycling, and then use your analytics to mine your big data on your value chain. It's all free, network neutral. Then with those analytics, you can create your own algorithms, your own apps, to dramatically increase your aggregate efficiency at every step of conversion on your value chain with your analytics, your algorithms, and apps 24/7. That dramatically increases your productivity, Dramatically reduces your ecological footprint because you're getting more out of less of the earth, less waste. And it reduces your marginal cost. Fixed cost, after that, the marginal costs are what it costs after your fixed costs are paid. Now, what's happening as we move to this Internet of Things platform, marginal costs are going down, and you're going to have a streamlined global market economy automated, very low marginal cost. Some of the marginal costs are going to zero, and that's giving birth to the sharing economy. Zero marginal cost. That's the title of the book. What is this sharing economy? It's very strange. I never thought capitalism would give birth, especially in its mature state. Capitalism's given birth to a child. It's called a sharing economy, and this little baby's flourishing alongside its capitalist parent. And of course, like any parent-child relationship, the parent, especially an older parent, has to figure out how to nurture this child, give it an identity, let it have a presence in the world. But you know, parents also try to absorb their children into their identity as well. It's a normal thing. They want to be a reflection sometimes of them. The child sometimes wants to be absorbed. Give me my startup company, and then one of the big guys will buy it in the market. But sometimes the child wants to create its own presence, its own frame of reference. So what we're seeing now, this sharing economy, as young as it is, it's the first new economic system to enter onto the world stage since capitalism and socialism in the 19th century. It's remarkable. We're already in a hybrid economic system. Here in this room, you are engaged part of the day in the capitalist market, producing and selling goods and services for a profit and a margin. Part of the day, you are sharing virtual goods all over the place, beyond the market and near zero marginal costs. They're free and abundant. By 2050, capitalism will be here, but it'll flourish to the extent it can find a relationship with this child, the sharing economy. It's going to be grown up. It will not be the exclusive arbiter of economic life. It's going to share the stage with its grown-up child. Capitalism, the sharing economy. We've already seen the zero marginal cost phenomena devastate whole industries since Napster. It's been 16 years since Napster. Look what's happened. We have 3 billion people on the internet, soon everybody. I'm working with the leadership of China. The vice premier 2 years ago said to me, Jeremy, guess what? We've got a $25 smartphone with more computing power than sent your boys to the moon. Everyone's going to be connected. Everyone is going to be connected to this. So we have 3 billion people now who are prosumers. They are still sellers, they're buyers, they're owners, they're workers, they're prosumers. They are producing their own music. The fixed cost of digital technology to produce music is studio quality, and it's going to be almost free in a few years. It's so cheap. The marginal cost of sharing that music with one person or a billion people is near zero. Young people are producing and sharing their own YouTube videos, open source, zero cost, and they are sharing with each other at zero marginal cost. They're producing and sharing their own news blogs, the social media. They're contributing to Wikipedia. They're constructing the knowledge of the world. And 6 million kids are on massive open online college courses, getting college credits. It's free. Whole industries have been devastated in 15 years. The music industry has shrunk. Television has declined. Newspapers and magazines have gone out of business. Book publishing, my new book came out on the Pirate Bays before we could publish, and they ranked it before Amazon could rank it. You can't defeat it unless you outlaw the technologies, and that's not going to happen. But whole new businesses emerged. Here they are in the room. Some of them profit, some of them nonprofit, and you are creating the apps, the connectivities, and the platforms. Now, some of that, you create revenue that goes back to capitalist markets, but then you are creating platforms so many other goods and services are free and beyond capitalist markets, right? Well, we all thought there'd be a firewall here, and that the zero marginal cost phenomenon might affect the communication internet, but it would not move over the firewall to the brick and mortar atoms world. This is what I'm saying. The Internet of Things platform, on top of which communication, energy, and transport, we've broken the firewall. We now have millions of people in the last few years producing their own renewable energy, and that energy is near zero marginal cost after you pay your fixed cost. We have millions of people who are now beginning to share cars and car sharing services, and it's soon going to be moving toward driverless transport at very low cost. Let's come back to Germany. What's happened in the 10 years since the Chancellor and I had that conversation? We're now at 32% of the electricity in Germany is solar and wind. We're heading to 50% within the next few years. It's going to be 100%. Solar and wind, geothermal, it's all going to be renewable by 2040. The fixed cost of the harvesting technologies for solar and wind, they've been on an exponential curve for 20 years, just like the computer chip. Now, I'm the oldest person here. When I was a little kid in the 1940s and 50s, computers cost millions of dollars, and IBM thought we'd only need 7 of them for the whole world, too expensive. No one anticipated that Intel chip in Moore's Law. Double the capacity, half the cost every 2 years, $25 smartphone today. Here's what's not, people aren't realizing. We've been on the same exponential curve for solar and wind in 20 years. A solar watt, little watt, cost $78 to generate 1 watt in 1978. It's 60 cents today. It's 38 cents in 18 months from now. And there are power companies in my global group who are quietly buying long-term solar and wind contracts for electricity at 4 cents a kilowatt hour for the next 20 years. We see the curves. It is actually over for fossil fuel and nuclear, but they're going to continue to hang in there because they have stranded assets. And that's the next big crisis after the housing crisis. All the stranded assets in these industries, fossil fuels, and all the loans outstanding. So, who's producing all this new electricity? It's all about digitalization, because you have to create the energy internet to begin to manage the electricity. There are 4 major power companies in Germany: EnBW, RWE, E.ON, Vattenfall. We thought they were invincible 10 years ago. Giant, vertically integrated global companies. And what has happened to them in 10 years is what happened to the music industry, and newspapers, and magazines, and book publishing, and television. Apparently in Germany, you're very good at organizing. Millions of people have come together and created electricity cooperatives all over Germany. Denmark's doing it too. And you all got low-interest loans from the banks because they knew you'd pay back by the premium energy you were sending to the grid. You're producing all the electricity for Germany. The big 4 power companies are producing less than 7% of the solar and wind electricity. This is power to the people. I mean this figuratively and literally, power to the people. Think of the ramifications. Energy is about the power of a civilization. It's being distributed now. It's being produced by all of us. You see the implications from the communication internet to the energy internet, and guess what? The marginal cost of this energy, once you pay the fixed cost, it's near zero. The sun isn't sending us a bill. The wind has an invoice, the geothermal heat's not sending a bill. Now you have, the wholesale prices have gone down, retail prices are slightly up because you have to pay more on your bill to get us over the hump, but you're heading there. Does this mean the end of the power companies? No, they have to change their business model, or they will be out. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I had a debate was scheduled. E.ON asked if I would debate Mr. Tyson, their chairman. They picked a neutral country, the Netherlands. I laid out a new business model. I said, everyone in the world is going to be producing their own green electricity. In every little village in 25 years from now with very, very cheap digital technology and harvesting technology. We're even placing solar now in paint and glass. It's going to be on wall facades. So our electricity cooperatives around the world will aggregate it and sell it back to the energy internet. And you, the power company, you're going to have to connect up with IT, consumer electronics, and other types, and telecom. And you're going to have to erect and manage the energy internet. And the way you're going to make money is by selling less and less and less electricity. You're not leaving the second industrial revolution tomorrow. You're going to be centralized energy for a while. But in the new model, it's counterintuitive. You'll make money by less electricity. You will set up partnerships, the power company, with thousands of enterprises. You will help them manage their data flow. You will help them with their analytics and their algorithms and apps so they can dramatically increase their aggregate efficiencies at every step of conversion on their energy flows. And guess what they'll do? The clients will share back their productivity gains in terms of performance contracts. Many companies in my group are already doing performance contracting in other areas. More money, sell less electricity, a more sustainable world, and it's the bottom line. And if you don't do it, there's plenty of startup companies and all sorts of companies in electronics, IT, transport, logistics. Everyone would like to do it. It's not just the EU. In China, this was a complete surprise to me. When President Xi and Premier Li came into office, Premier Li put out his official biography. I'd never met him. He said he read the Third Industrial Revolution book, and he instructed the central government of China to move on the narrative that I'm outlining to you today. To show you how fast China moves, after my first formal visit, I've been working with the leadership now for a few years, 11 weeks later, the chairman of the State Grid for Electricity announced an $82 billion four-year commitment to digitalize the electricity grid of China now, so millions of Chinese people could produce their own solar and wind and send it back to the grid now. Watch Germany, watch China. The coming together of the communication internet with the energy internet, all digitalized, makes room for the digitalized, automated GPS and driverless transport internet. The car was the centerpiece of the second industrial revolution. Sell cars, grow the economy. That's the global phenomenon. But the problem is all the millennials in this room, you've thrown us a curve. You don't want to own the cars. You want access to mobility and networks. You're no longer interested in ownership in cars and markets. I wrote a book, The Age of Access, back in 2000. I said I thought you would do it. Thank God you did it. Otherwise, that would have looked pretty foolish. You did it. But it's thrown a curve into the system. For every car shared, 15 cars are being eliminated from production. So you go up on the communication internet with your smartphone, it immediately connects you to GPS, transport internet. A vehicle is located within 90 seconds of you, and you pay by PayPal. Why would you want to ever own a car again? Larry Burns, the former executive vice president of General Motors, did a study, and he found that in Ann Arbor, Michigan, this is the former executive VP at GM, we can eliminate 80% of the vehicles right now with car sharing. We have 1 billion vehicles in the world choking us in traffic. They're the number 3 cause of climate change. Number 1 is buildings, but we're turning them all into micro power plants. Number 2, which no one wants to talk about, including Al Gore, the number 2 cause of climate change is beef production, beef consumption, animal husbandry. Nobody wants to talk about it. And if we can't talk about changing our diet, and we'd rather see extinction, then we have some real problems. Number 3 is transport. I suspect that beginning with the millennials and then your children and grandchildren, increasingly you're going to buy less cars. You're going to be in automated networks. And those vehicles you have are going to be electric. They're going to be fuel cell. They're going to be operated by near zero marginal cost renewable energy already in Germany. They're going to be 3D printed with composite materials. They're going to be driverless. And China just introduced the first driverless air drone in Las Vegas this week. Auto, road, rail, water, air. Driverless, zero marginal cost labor. This is a revolution. Does that mean the end of the transport industry? No. If they change their business model, they have to be both in the second and the third industrial revolution simultaneously for 30 years. In the new model, the old model, they'll still sell vehicles. In the new model, they team up with other industries, IT, consumer electronics, logistics, and they help erect and manage the automated GPS, road, rail, water, and air networks. And partner with all the startups that are now beginning to create the apps and the connections and the platforms. And if they don't, you'll do it for them anyway. They need you more than you need them. They have to come and get together with where you're heading here. Because this room began this process with the communication internet. Now you've got to take the technology to energy, transport, and logistics, and then put it on top of the Internet of Things platform and make all the connections. The coming together of the communication, energy, and transport internet on top of the Internet of Things platform takes us into a new era. What does this mean for us? There's been a lot of discussion here about Europe this afternoon. About 1.5 years ago, Prime Minister Renzi took over the rotating presidency of the EU. He asked me to join him in Venice to issue a declaration for a new journey of Europe called Digital Europe. I joined him, but I pointed out Digital Europe is not just free Wi-Fi and universal broadband, It is actually this whole system, this platform, this infrastructure. Then I wrote a memorandum, which you should have on your chairs. Do you have this memorandum? It was not put out. We have a long 30-page memorandum that should be put out. I wrote a memorandum to Mr. Juncker outlining this narrative for Digital Europe. He got back to me and said, this is where we want to go. I've been working with the leadership in Brussels, just came from there. And here's what we're looking at. laying out this communication, energy, and transport digitalized super internet across the EU and its partnership regions in the next 30 years, on top of an Internet of Things platform, so we can create an integrated single market, high-tech, all digital, so that anyone that plugs into that system, whether you're a profit, a nonprofit, or a government, you can increase your aggregate efficiencies and productivity with analytics, reduce your marginal cost and your ecological footprint, and actually become a sustainable economy. It's digitalization that lowers the marginal cost and the footprint. This is a much bigger venue than just coming up with some killer product lines so you can be another Steve Jobs. You have to find a way to collaborate and create the system, the infrastructure, the platform. And the EU has joined China. China calls their plan Digital Plus. We've been working in both Beijing and Brussels, and now we're talking about a joint belt, one road from Shanghai to Rotterdam, so that over 50 years we can begin to live in peace and share a common platform and engage with each other as human family. Last few minutes. I think this is a very difficult challenge. I'm not a technological optimist. I think there are many roadblocks in the way that would tell me we'll never get there in time to address climate change and reheal this planet. On the other hand, what's plan B? Stay in the second industrial revolution? That's collapse. So we have to believe we can do it, but it requires not just technology. It requires a change in consciousness. Technology just enables. And what I've noticed that makes me guardedly hopeful, but not more than that, is the change. 3 areas I've seen change. The difference in how the generations perceive freedom, perceive power, and perceive community. My generation, we all believe that freedom is the ability to be autonomous, to be independent, self-sufficient, not beholden on others, an island to ourselves. So we define freedom as exclusivity. If I'm on my own, I'm free. Nobody tells me what to do. But for a younger millennial generation growing up on the internet, for you, if freedom is the ability to flourish, you define being able to flourish by the relationships you create, the networks you have access to. Freedom is inclusivity, autonomy is death, correct? Death. And we have a different idea of power. My generation sees power as a pyramid. It's always top down. The 1 to the many, the 1%, the 99%, that's the way society is organized, not always. Your generation is beginning to ask the question about institutional power. Is the government, is the business, is the school system, is their behavior centralized, patriarchal, top down, and proprietary? Or is their behavior distributed, open, transparent, collaborative, and laterally scaled? For you, lateral power, the ability in networks to share your talent for the good of the network so that your own social capital is improved, that's lateral power. That's not vertical power, that's a revolution. Finally, I'm just beginning to sense, and you judge, you're the millennials in here, a change in the notion of community. I grew up in a post-Westphalian geopolitical world. Every individual is a sovereign agent, and we compete with every other individual in the marketplace in a scarce economy of resources to see who can possess the most. It's a zero-sum game. But we have a younger generation now growing up, and they're Skyping in global classrooms, and they're all on Facebook and an extended fictional family across the globe, and gossiping on Twitter, and sharing everything from music now to energy, and they're beginning to see themselves as part of the biosphere, the indivisible community of the planet, that little 20 kilometers from the stratosphere to the oceans where life exists with the chemistry of the earth. We have high school kids now coming home, in the developing world too, but many in the industrial world are saying, why does Dad use so much water while he shaves? We're wasting the water. Why is the television on, no one's watching it? Why do we have 2 cars we can car share? And here's the one I like. Where'd the hamburger come from on the plate? We got kids rebelling at dinner. They're asking, did it come from a rainforest? Did they have to destroy the trees for 3 inches of soil to get that little burger? And when the trees are destroyed, what happened to the rare species that live in that tree canopy? Extinct? And if there's no trees to absorb CO2 to graze my cow, then CO2 emissions go up. And some farmer can't feed her kids because she's got floods and droughts. The kids are learning ecological footprint. They're learning that everything they do intimately connects and affects the well-being of every other species, every being, the planet itself. That is a sea change in consciousness. That did not exist before this generation. This is a biosphere consciousness, not a geopolitical frame. It changes history. So here's what I would say. I really believe this is a tough challenge. We've got the people in the room that can help make this happen. But what needs to happen is we have to move from our myopic position of looking at individual product lines, and we have to then think about how we can use our talents to help integrate the entire infrastructure of this revolution and bring industries together. It's going to require a huge workforce to lay down the infrastructure. It's going to require industries to work across the lines, and the talent in this room can create the apps, the connections, the analytics, the algorithms that can help put this system together over 30 or 40 years. If we don't, we'll end up with all these little myopic, siloed little pilot projects and a lot of fun little technologies that don't get us into creating a new economic paradigm for civilization. So my hope is, over the next 2 generations, you and your children dedicated to this task can move this paradigm quickly. I hope you do, and you're going to send me a little card up there and let me know how this turned out. But if you don't, future generations may not be able to enjoy this planet. Our fellow creatures might not have their moment to flourish. And what we know is life is pretty precious. We're sending out radio waves. No one's responding to us in the universe. This may be a very, very special experiment. Our obligation, replenish the Earth. Take this digital revolution and make sure that allows us to come together as a living family, an evolutionary family, so that we can help each other flourish on this little planet. Thank you.